SCP Professor Kain Pathos Crow is a dog, or something that at least resembles a dog and has dog-like characteristics. We watched Josie the Half-Cat SCP-529, I believe it was, a few days ago, and it turns out there was a dog professor in there that was having some canine urges, and I never heard about this doctor. I think I had heard about him before, but now I'm curious after I saw that. So I saw recently that SCP Explained put out a video about this, so we're gonna check it out today. Make sure to subscribe to SCP Explained. Subscribe to me if you like reaction videos, and let's get into this one.
So here's a statement that won't blow anyone's mind.
Okay.
The SCP Foundation is really weird. And we're not even talking about the actual anomalies they contain. Sure, this top-secret organization puts in the time and the effort to make sure menaces to society, like the hard-to-destroy reptile, the Scarlet King, and even the horrifying bad joke tomatoes stay behind lock and key. But sometimes
we reacted to that one. That was really good, actually.
And see just what the heck is going on. I mean, seriously, think about it. This is an organization that uses live human beings farmed from death row as test subjects. Right. Considering how rarely the death penalty is actually employed in the Western world these days, you know some shady strings are being pulled there. And what about the O5 Council, the leaders of humanity's last line of defense against anomalous chaos? And according to some accounts, they're a group of vain, morally bankrupt individuals who regularly use anomalies like SCP-006, the Fountain
to enhance their
for own personal benefit. And don't even get me started
Power's corrupt,
actual scientists working under the Foundation's payroll. That's when things start getting even stranger.
Right.
Of course, there's
like the
Dr.
dog.
Jack Bright, a man forever changed by the chance interaction with SCP-963.
He's a peculiar one.
Medallion, and one of Abel's deadly blades. Now, he's an immortal weirdo who's equal parts brilliant and a total nuisance. Right. So much so that there's an entire dedicated list forbidding all of his zanier antics.
I've watched some of those. They were interesting. They're pretty funny.
Don't even try to shake his hand, given how much this ex-GOC wildcard loves using violence to solve his problems. You may draw back a stump. He specializes in reality warping anomalies, often wields a ukulele because he's just so darn quirky. Oh, and he's very likely the baby daddy to a teenage nature sprite after a dalliance with a goddess. Or,
that's how that was interesting.
What about Dr. Charles Ogden Gears? Sure, he may not look that strange to the naked eye. He's a man so dull and humorous that gray is his favorite color, and he thinks sugar on cornflakes is an act of unacceptable decadence. But he's got a whole lot of strangeness under the hood. Like the fact he's such an emotionally unavailable father that his daughters across dimensions have formed a splinter cell of the Serpent's Hand, where they work
pretty
under the
rebellious.
pseudonym the Black Queen, just to spite him. Dr. Dan, through acts of sabotage, was personally responsible for the worst SCP-096 outbreak in Foundation history.
I don't think I've ever seen that. I don't think I've ever heard of him.
Just so he could receive clearance to terminate the creature. And he got that clearance, on the condition that the SCP Foundation would be terminating him for his crimes as soon as the goal was achieved.
That's some corrupt stuff right there.
Oh my god. Did someone dress a dog up in scientist clothes? Oh my god, that's the cutest thing I've ever seen. Oh, this is just brighten my day. Okay, maybe I was being too harsh on the Foundation before. Whose dog is this?
Excuse me, sir, that is extremely inappropriate.
Wait, you can talk?
Of course I can talk, you dolt. I'm Professor Kain Pathos Crow, one of the SCP Foundation's finest minds in the field of advanced robotics and biochemistry. I have a level 4 clearance for 343's sake. I'm not some common bloody mutt.
Oh, my apologies, Professor Crow. I wasn't aware you were a talking dog.
He looks like a dog.
Yes, I imagine there's a lot you don't know about me, isn't there?
Tell us.
I'm a little embarrassed to admit it, but that's true, Professor Crow. Our data on you and your work
I don't know anything about him either.
Is a little sparse.
Here, take these files. These should give you a good primer.
Okay.
In your dog mouth?
Professor Kain Pathos Crow, among a lineup of extremely eccentric researchers, somehow manages to rise to the very top in terms of sheer strangeness. To get the most obvious fact out of the way, yes, while he was once a human, an anomalous experiment did result in him being turned into a Labrador Retriever.
So it was an experiment.
How did this happen, you may ask? We have the same question. Sadly, Professor Crow is incredibly reluctant to share any details about this strange and embarrassing incident. So we're just gonna have to accept it.
So it wasn't written in.
Everyone ready? Okay, good. Despite his strange appearance, Professor Crow is actually one of the more scientifically qualified of the Foundation researchers.
That's cool.
It's no surprise that, because of this, he has a relatively close working relationship
So he has
with
a
Dr.
nose
Gears.
for it?
So much so that he still refers to Gears by his early Foundation codename, Cog, a reference to both the legendary Stern Doctor's initials and a pun on his iconic surname. During one incident, Dr. Gears did tell Professor Crow to terminate an anomaly that was, for all intents and purposes, a human child, if it presented any difficulties. This sours the wholesomeness of that previous fact, so we'll swiftly move on. Once again, Dr. Gears is just terrible with kids. Like a lot of Foundation researchers, Professor Crow was personally headhunted by the SCP Foundation after his academic work in the fields of advanced robotics and biochemistry started turning heads. This was, just for clarity's sake, back before Professor Crow was turned into a Labrador. Professor Crow spends most of his time working in Bioresearch Area 12, where he studies a variety of anomalies. But his bookish nature also earned him another interesting position. He's the SCP Foundation's chief librarian, where his encyclopedic knowledge of anomalous technical literature has made him a valuable asset in archiving and organization. This balances out some of Professor Crow's indiscretions. It is important to specify that Professor Crow is genuinely a well-liked figure among his SCP Foundation coworkers. After all, who wouldn't love to work with an adorable dog in a lab coat and glasses all day?
I mean, it depends. Does he let you pet him and stuff?
Also somewhat mistake-prone, with a number of these mistakes putting him in the crosshairs of his superiors.
He killed people by accident?
Outright termination several times, perhaps the most out of any prominent researcher currently working at the Foundation.
You know, it's like Puss in Boots. Like, they give you them sad puppy dog eyes when they did something wrong and they don't mean to. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious, dude.
However, to keep himself out of the same dead man walking category that the thoroughly unpleasant Dr. Dan currently finds himself in, Professor Crow has a few aces up his sleeve. Firstly, he's got friends in the administrative department willing to pull a few strings to keep him out of harm's way.
I see.
Hey, maybe they're just very ardent dog lovers up there. The other thing that's kept him from being
Does he let O5 count a bit?
Overqualified chew toy for SCP-682 is the contents of his brilliant brain. On many of the occasions where the O5 Council have considered terminating him, he's demonstrated the fact he possesses vital and often irreplaceable knowledge, saving his furry skin.
Irreplaceable.
A perfect example of the kinds of strange scrapes that Professor Crow gets himself into is the incident in 2009, where, without even realizing it, he somehow traveled through time and scared the living daylights out of everyone. The details are best expressed here, in Professor Crow's own dictated notes. 1802.
They did it through the phone booth.
In all my years working here, there have been few things which have irritated me. Caused me physical harm, yes. Caused me undue stress, yes. Caused me innumerable amount of mental distress, yes. But few things have just irritated me.
Like?
Time travel is one of them. I went to bed on the 15th of January, year 2009 at 1:30 a.m.
Not being able to figure it out,
on February 18th at 9:26 a.m. of the same year. I hadn't moved, I had only 9 hours of sleep, and to me, nothing had happened. Then, after a slightly confused day amidst the many cries of, "I thought you were dead," among other things I might add, I discovered that I have been missing for the past month and 3 days.
That's
In that
weird.
time, Sophia had completely taken over my duties, though she had halted all of my personal experiments and was trying her utmost to relocate me, while keeping my disappearance from the higher-ups. Apparently,
data expunged.
Leaving me to sleep in a small self-contained bubble of
Data expunged.
and making at least
Data expunged.
which was eventually ruptured by
Data expunged.
and sending me back to this
Oh
phase
my
of space
God.
and time. Needless to say, I was slightly irritated, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
24/02/2009. They've had me in quarantine for nearly the past week, observing me and running tests to see if they can find any sort of strange abnormalities with my physiology, my behavior, my anything. If I had one more hand shoved up my nether regions, or I'm forced to look at one more bloody ink blot, I'm going to flip out and go rabid. They'll say they'll stop the quarantine soon, and Sophia says the higher-ups still haven't caught on to anything. I suppose I'm lucky in that count.
So you went to sleep, woke up 30 days later,
when it's too dead to be any sort of immediate security hazard.
and he don't know
Still, I
why.
guess I can see where they're
Neither
coming
did they.
from. If it were my decision, I'd probably force a quarantine too, and probably for longer. At least they had the decency to give me my clothes, my PDA, and someone to dictate to. 12/03/2009.
I'm still
Remember
here,
them?
and I hate it.
Palm Pilot.
Day in, day out, it's the same thing.
Old
Get
school.
up, eat, exercise, then simple observation until lunch, then more observation until dinner, then
Right.
lights out. I'm not allowed anything other than the things I already have, and even then, I only got those because Sophia felt bad for me. I'm only allowed to
Wow.
use them every day for an hour at most.
Boredom
Otherwise,
is
they're
dangerous,
also in
man.
observational storage. All this wasted time that I could have been doing something constructive, something useful, something interesting, but no. I'm stuck here because of a blind twist of fate, forcing me into this monotonous hell. They keep
That
telling
was
me I'll
weird.
get out soon.
Completely random.
05/05/2009. They've seen fit to release me. I almost
Good.
thought I was going to die in there. Still, it almost seems strange to be out and about again. But I do appreciate being back in my own quarters, my own clothes, and my beloved walker back by my side. Sophia has taken good care of the facility while I was gone.
Good old
I think I
Sophia.
might actually leave that to her while I keep to my experiments. She seems to enjoy it a great deal. Suits her analytical mind. All of my personal experiments are still waiting for me, with the exception of the 040 test logs. They simply haven't posted their findings yet, stating that they needed my approval first. So I'll have to pour through those the first chance I get. I'm interested
So
in the progress
mundane,
she
man.
has made. Still, there is a good deal of work to be done, and I am more than ready enough to take it on. After all, I have to make up for lost time, don't I? It's clear that life isn't easy for poor Professor Crow.
Right.
Much like Dr. Bright after experiencing the mysterious event that turned him into a dog, Professor Crow is both a researcher and an anomaly. And unlike the superficially subtle presentation of Dr. Bright's anomalous nature, it's hard to hide the strangeness of a talking dog in human clothes. This bizarre interstitial zone he occupies forces the Foundation to keep him on an extremely short leash.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
You can't get
Seriously,
out.
Professor, it wasn't intended, I swear. Anyway, the point is Professor Crow isn't allowed to clock off at the end of the workday like his fellow researchers do.
He just has to
He's
stay.
forced to remain on site.
He's an
almost
anomaly.
never appearing in public.
At
If
least
the
it's
professor
not
wasn't the kind of person who could
solitary
easily get lost in
confinement.
his work, a situation like this would probably drive him
Yeah,
insane.
you could work
Speaking
at least,
of,
you know.
You're probably wondering by
Stimulate
this
your
point,
mind.
other than being the cutest researcher at the Foundation, sorry, Dr. Clef, you're special in your own way, we promise. What kind of work is Professor Kain Pathos Crow actually known for around here? Professor Crow's most notable body of work is largely based on an opinion that's pretty controversial to hold around the SCP Foundation.
Okay.
He believes that they should be actively utilizing anomalies that aren't dangerous in order to further their collective goals. An excellent example of this is the cordial relationship he has with SCP-040.
When you think about the ethics of the Foundation and just kind of the way they do stuff, the O5 Council already utilizes anomalies to further their own, you know, their their power, you know what I mean? And it just seems like they would be doing stuff like that, weaponizing things to destroy SCPs, and in some instances they do. So I don't know why it's not just an acceptable thing. Maybe it just needs a majority vote or whatever, and their ethics are always questionable anyway. So I'm just wondering how that all comes together.
Also known as Evolution's Child. She's a powerful reality warper who is able to synthesize new anomalous life from pre-existing living creatures. Professor Crow, who refers to her as Emma in his personal writings, was initially training her to do this with SCP-148, the infamous telekill alloy. However, he also filed a formal request to go further, saying,
Never heard that.
I think it's about time we started trying to utilize 040's abilities, or at the very least, allowing her to use them enough to actually learn how to control them. She will not be able to rely on the SCP-148 hairpieces forever. We theorize that as she gets older, her powers will increase exponentially, possibly to the point where her unconscious telepathy cannot be contained. He also somewhat infamously went ham with a series of experiments using SCP-158, a frightening anomalous device known as the Soul Extractor, which, contrary to its name, Professor Crow also realized could place removed souls into other objects or creatures. This led to the creation of a being that Crow dubbed Zero, because it was Subject Zero in his experiments to create a composite soul using SCP-158.
Wow.
He spoke of this subject, somewhat creepily, in his notes. Zero would make an excellent candidate for my assistant. It respects and admires me for its creation much as a child would an endearing father.
Frankenstein, man.
I have assured it that it would be treated well, and that I would give it a host to the best of my ability to create. All that it asks of me is that it be given a name other than Zero. A name
not a number. I told it to give itself a name, to christen itself whatever it so wishes.
Okay.
It told me it would have to think about it. Like a lot of strange and fascinating figures, everything you learn about Professor Kain Pathos Crow seems to raise new questions. Is Crow just a mad scientist without a cause, eager to perform bizarre experiments for their own sake?
He's bored out of his mind. He can't leave the Foundation.
The sum total of all of Professor Crow's work is Project Olympia, a topic that probably deserves a whole video in its own right. And do sound off in the comments if you'd like to hear more about the deranged Frankenstein project that Professor Crow has devoted his life to. You see, Project Olympia is Crow's baby, and also his attempt to play God. Through combining a variety of different anomalies, including all the ones we've mentioned here, and several others, he would hope to create an entirely artificial living thing that would serve the interests of the SCP
Creating
Foundation.
life.
How exactly this would be beneficial to
Technically
the SCP
playing
Foundation
God.
is admittedly a little confusing, but seeing this goal through to its conclusion has become an all-consuming obsession for Professor Crow. He's performed countless experiments.
Gotta
with a
strive
huge catalog
something
of
in the
anomalies
board.
under the Project Olympia umbrella. He's written reams upon reams of notes and logs on the subject, and produced a huge number of prototypes. He's also used Project Olympia as a pretense to remove even more souls using SCP-158. That just appears to be a strange obsession of his, doesn't it? Incidentally, we aren't the only ones confused about the exact purpose and value of Project Olympia. When members of the O5 Council finally got a proper look at Professor Crow's work with the project, they released the following statement. All activity related to Project Olympia has been discontinued. Overwatch Command has deemed it to be a gross waste of resources and permanently removed support for the project, with personnel assigned to work with it being moved to alternative sites. A hearing is to be held with the project administrators to determine how the project was able to continue as long as it did, despite the lack of any concrete results. Prototypes and other equipment have been slated to be decommissioned. Professor Crow took this news about as well as you could expect, but in the end, he always finds a way to wriggle out and continue doing whatever he wants to do. Because that's what Professor Kain Pathos Crow is all about.
Because he's
living
able
proof
to
that sometimes
prove to the
you just
O5
can't
Council.
keep a good dog down. Now go check out SCP.
He was able to prove to the SCP Council that he's still valuable. You know, if you are in the position that you're bored, how's the little saying goes for that? The idle hands or the devil's playthings or something like that. The idea that when you're bored, you do things to keep yourself occupied, even though they could be mischievous. And he's already addicted to research. He's already engrossed in all of these SCPs. It only seems like he'd want to take it to the next level, you know? Almost like when you play games, you want to compete until you get better or get to the last level or try to figure out tricks and glitches. And it's human nature to want to move further and further and further into something that you're already into. And if work is his life, I don't blame him for wanting to go deep, man. So, I don't know. That's pretty interesting, though. Heard about quite a few SCPs in this one that I wasn't familiar with that I'd like to find out more about, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, make sure to subscribe to SCP Explained. Subscribe to me if you like reaction videos and give me a like on the video. Thanks so much for watching. As always, this is Zueljin signing off, and we'll see you next time.